Welcome back to the Kickstarter Weekly, everyone. In this week's episode, I'll be looking at campaigns that are completing their funding from May 9th through the 15th. And I actually have 9 different campaigns to talk about today, so it's going to be a big episode on that front. But as I mentioned in last week's episode, I'm recovering from a thrown out back, which had me bedridden for several days and has made it very difficult to do anything for the last 2 weeks or so. So I don't actually have any more played games to talk about. So this week's episode is going to almost exclusively focus on the currently running campaigns, which is probably a good thing since there's so many of them. And then I will briefly talk about the 2 games that I pledged from last week's episode, and there are actually no games that were acquired during this period either. So this video will be spanning less content, less types of content than the usual video, but we'll be talking about almost 2 times the usual number of crowdfunding campaigns. Let's start with our first campaign of the video. This is going to be Phraya, which is over on Gamefound, not Kickstarter. They had a minimum funding goal of $11,000. Currently they're at $14,500, which is just under 1.5 times that minimum required funding goal. Now this campaign is going to complete its funding on Monday, May the 9th, but it's completing its funding at like 2 in the morning. So right after the clock switches over through midnight from Sunday night. So don't expect to be able to go back this one on Monday. If you wake up and you decide to go check out the campaign, it will already have completed its funding. So you need to look at this one over the weekend if it's something that you still want to back. It plays 2 to 4 players in about 90 to 120 minutes. Complexity on Phraya is medium light, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at high. Now, there's not really a lot of new things going on in this game. It's not kind of rewriting the genre or anything. It's just doing what it does well. It's a collection of mechanics, and it's for probably a lighter crowd. It's got commodity speculation, pick up and deliver, and set collection. Essentially what players are going to be doing is moving boats around various canals, interacting with businesses, buying and selling products, and that will affect the price of goods because it'll be changing in the market as players buy and sell things. It reminds me a little bit of Yamatai and a heavier game that came out within the last couple of years called Venice. Both of those games feature boats kind of traveling around and interacting with different things as they do. But again, this one's going to be on the lighter side, focusing specifically on resource management, buying and selling goods, the way that that affects the market, and overall set collection. It's designed by Alberto Milan, who's worked on Journey to the Center of the Earth, Paradox University, and Sherlock Entre Tumbas, with art by Michael Manzel, who's probably one of the biggest, most well-known fantasy board game artists out there. He's worked on so much stuff, amazing games, but the 5 games that he's most well known for, I should say, are the most highest rated on Board Game Geek, are Dominion Intrigue, My City, Shogun, and Stone Age. And the game is being published by DMZ Games. They've previously published Adele, High Score, and The Treasure of Isla Tortuga. Now, this one is simple in the scope of the campaign, as well as featuring a game that is on the simpler side, on the lighter side. So there are 2 different pledges, although one of them is an early pledge, and it was still up the last time that I saw it. It didn't have a timer on it, so I'm not sure if that pledge is simply for a certain number of units, and once they sell those units, then they'll be going to the higher pledge. Usually when that happens, though, they indicate the number of units, and they haven't here. So you may still be able to get this one for the early bird price. So that pledge is $44. It's called Early Rising Merchant, and that will get you the game and the stretch goals, assuming it's still available. If it's not, then you'll just have to pledge the other pledge level, which is the exact same thing. It's just a few dollars more. It's $48, and it's called Waterway Merchant, and that will get you the exact same items. So I think what had happened is they just hadn't put a timer or a unit max on the earlier pledge, and I think they've left that up. So you may still be able to get it for that earlier price. Now there are also 2 add-ons for this game. For $19, you can add on the playmat, and for $17, you can add on metal coins. And those things are not included in the pledge levels, so if you want them, you will need to add them on as add-ons. Shipping in the continental United States is being estimated at $21, and DMZ Games is currently planning on delivering Phraya in September of 2022. So that's this year, it's not that far off. The second campaign of this weekly is Assault on Doomrock Ultimate Edition. This is also on Gamefound. This one had a minimum funding goal of $42,000. It's currently at $180,000, which is a little over 4 times that minimum required funding goal. This project is also going to fund on Monday, May 9th, but it's going to fund a little bit later in the day. So likely you would have a chance to back this one last minute on Monday. It plays 1 to 4 players. Games typically take 2 to 3 hours. Complexity on the game is medium heavy, and we're going to be setting the risk associated with this campaign at medium high. I almost want to describe this game as a tower defense game, but it's not really that. It's just a brawler with dice rolling. It's a cooperative game. It's got events in it and lots of enemies, waves of enemies. But it's not really a tower defense game. It's sort of somewhere between that and kind of a dungeon crawler. But essentially players will be working together, processing through these events that happen and fighting a lot of enemies using dice. The game is designed by Tom Stasiak, who worked on the original Assault on Doomrock, as well as a game called Crisis at Steamfall. The art is by Bartok Plowecki, who worked on both of those games as well. And the publisher here, Beautiful Disaster Games, they've published both of those games too. There are 4 different pledge levels for Assault on Doomrock. The first pledge is for $81. It's called Simply Doomed. That will get you the ultimate version of the core game, the base game, a promo deck, stretch goals, and some modular expansions. For $15 more, or $96 total, you can pledge the Doomstrider pledge level, and that will add on 2 more items, custom dice, and metal coins. For $123, you can pledge the roguelike pledge level, and that will add on the roguelike expansion. For $175, you can pledge the all-in. That's going to give you everything I've mentioned previously and 2 more items. One is a neoprene battleground mat, and the other one is poker chips. So this game has cardboard tokens that are used for health, kind of like the chip theory games like Too Many Bones, Cloudspire, things like that. And if you pledge at this higher level, you'll be getting poker chips, which will function much like the health units of those games. There are a few different items that are available as add-ons if you want to get them specifically and not pledge everything. For $26, you can add on the roguelike expansion. For $32, you can add on those upgraded poker chips. And for $21, you can add on that neoprene battleground mat. Now, they've issued 3 different shipping estimate prices, $21, $23, and $24, so there's not really that much of a difference between them. But the $21 is the estimate for the first 2 pledge levels, $23 is the roguelike pledge level, and $24 is the all-in. And $24 is also going to be the shipping estimate if you add on things like the poker chips, which are heavy, and the neoprene playmat, which requires more shipping. So either way, though, it is kind of a smaller estimate, $21 to $24. So you're in the same ballpark, any pledge level that you pledge at. And finally, Beautiful Disaster Games is planning on delivering Assault on Doomrock Ultimate Edition in February of 2023. Now, there's actually a lot of these campaigns that are on Gamefound this week. The next one is no exception. So we're staying on Gamefound for Uprising, Titans of the First Age. This one had a minimum required funding goal of $40,000. They're currently at $569,000, which is about 14 times that minimum required funding goal. This project's going to complete its funding on Tuesday, May 10th. The game is for 1 to 4 players. It plays in about 2 to 4 hours. It has a complexity level of heavy, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at medium high. Now, Uprising is a cooperative 4X game set in a post-apocalyptic fantasy world. It's actually been produced once before. It ran on Kickstarter, it did fairly well. I think one of the things to know about this game is that there are no miniatures in it. They use these acrylic standees, which are very bright colors, yellows, reds. It depends on your player faction. But they're very, very attractive acrylic standees. I really like them. I think they look just as cool as miniatures. And, you know, they have like a screen printing or a heat transfer printing of the image on the colored standees, and the art looks spectacular. So I think this is an example of a game that's not going the miniature route. Miniatures can be very expensive, but I think sometimes people also underestimate how expensive these kinds of standees can be, and also how good they look. So I'm not sure if it's really that much cheaper for them to be doing it the way that they are, but I really do like this style just as much as miniatures. I think it looks just as good. Now, what makes this game cooperative and not just competitive is that there are 2 AI factions players are going to be playing against in addition to each other: Chaos and the Empire. If you've ever played a game like Australia, it has a similar mechanic where you're competing against each other and trying to score more points, but there's an AI faction. In that game, it's sort of the old ones, Cthulhu. And if they win the game, everybody loses. It doesn't really matter who loses by more. You just need to make sure that everybody beats out Cthulhu, the old ones. In this game, it's similar. You're playing 2 different AI factions. From everything that I know about it, they're both pretty tough. And so there is a lot of cooperative work that needs to go into players working together. Much more so than, I think, the differences in their strategies and kind of beating each other. But that is why the game is primarily billed as a cooperative game and not a competitive game, even though technically players are still playing against each other. Also, if you're wondering sort of the pedigree of the game, you know, how much people like it, considering that the original Kickstarter already delivered, people have been playing it for a while. It currently has an 8.5 rating on Board Game Geek, which is pretty damn good. So hopefully that gives people who haven't already had a chance to play it and are thinking about backing it now a little bit more of a vote of confidence, because you know going into this that the game is already a good game, or at least a lot of people think so. It's not an unknown. It's not an unproduced game. All 3 of these designers worked on the first game, Uprising, Curse of the Emperor, and that's all that they've worked on. This is kind of their first foray into board gaming, crowdfunding, and publishing. Those designers are Cornelius Kremen, Powell Mazur, and Dirk Summer. And the 3 artists that are working on the game are Igor Dessel, Bartek Fedicek, and Dirk Summer. And of those 3 artists, the only one among them that's worked on other games besides the Uprising series is Bartek Fedicek. And he has also worked on Flotilla, Unsettled, Vindication, and Waste Knights 2nd Edition. Actually, an amazing group of games. Finally, this is being published by Nemesis Games. They previously published Uprising, Curse of the Emperor. On this campaign, we've got 5 different pledge levels and then a ton of add-ons. The first pledge is $59. It's called Titans Pledge, and that's going to get you the new expansion. And just to reiterate, Titans of the First Age is an expansion for Curse of the Emperor. So you don't want to only get Titans of the First Stage, you need the base game as well. So either you have it already, or you're going to get everything in this campaign. If you have the base game already, then yes, you can pledge at this level. You're going to be getting just kind of new stuff to expand upon the first game. New heroes, a few new heroes, new hero cards, mercenaries, and some more components and mechanics. For $99, the Uprising level, you can pledge what is basically a reprint of the core game, Curse of the Emperor. So Uprising, Curse of the Emperor. Won't get you a new expansion, just the new edition of the original base game. So if you haven't backed it before and you don't feel like you want to go all in and get everything, that's definitely the place to start. That will get you what you need to experience the base game. Then for $134, you can pledge at the veteran level. That's kind of the everything new level, so that will get you the expansion and then a bunch of upgrades that are kind of new to this series. You'll get deluxe components, the allied card pack, and the painted curse miniatures. If you pledge at the 199 Hero Pledge level, you will get the new version, the second edition of the core game. You'll also get the new expansion, and then you'll get an expansion that was available with the first campaign. So the new expansion is kind of the second expansion. The expansion that was already available along with the first campaign is called the Arch Nemesis expansion. So you'll get the core game and both expansions. That's it. If you pledge at $299, which is the ultimate level, you're going to be getting essentially the hero and the veteran together. So you'll get all of the new stuff, and you'll get the core, the first expansion, and the new expansion. But you're also going to get two additional things: the Blessings card pack and the Armory card pack. Now, as far as add-ons go, if you want to pledge at a lower level and then add on specific items that you want piecemeal, for $10, you can add on the Allies card pack. For $10, you can add on the Armory card pack. For $25, you can add on the Blessings card pack, so that's more expensive than the other ones. For $15, you can add on a hexagonal dice tray. Also for $15, you can add on a dice pack. $39 is the cost of the Painted Curse miniatures as an add-on. $39 is also the add-on price for the deluxe components. $59 will get you the Arch Nemesis expansion, which was the original expansion that came with the first campaign. That's not offered at every pledge level, so if you want to get that, you can get it as an add-on for that price. And $49 is the cost for the German upgrade pack, and that basically will translate the game into German. It'll get you all of the components that you need in German. They've listed two different shipping estimates for this campaign, $24 and $36, and that's for continental US shipping. So the $24 I know is for the first two pledge levels, Hero and Uprising, and the $36 level is for the higher two pledge levels, Hero and the All-In, which means that they haven't listed a shipping estimate for Veteran. But I think if you use that $24 and $36, it's probably in the middle. It's probably going to be about $30. And Nemesis Games is planning on delivering Uprising Titans of the First Age in April of 2023. If it's not already obvious, I list these campaigns in the order that they fund. So if you're watching this for the first time, the games that I talk about first are the games that are completing their funding first, and the games that I talk about last are completing their funding last. So with that said, we're going back to Kickstarter for this one. It's called Autobahn. It's on Kickstarter. It had a minimum required funding goal of $15,000. It's currently got about $168,000 in the coffers, which is about 11 times that minimum required funding goal. And this one is going to complete its funding on Wednesday, May 11th. It plays 1 to 4 players in about 90 to 150 minutes. It has a complexity of heavy, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at medium low. Theme-wise, this one is an economic Euro that's all about building the German motorway system over 3 different eras, ranging from World War II to present day. It's co-designed by Fabio Lopano, who's worked on Kalamala, Merv, Heart of the Silk Road, and Ragusa, and Nestor Mangone, who's worked on Darwin's Journey, Masters of Renaissance, Lorenzo Il Magnifico, the card game, and Newton. The art on Autobahn is by Javier Gonzalez Cava, who's worked on Caverna the Cave Farmers, Cooper Island, and Watson and Holmes, and the game is being published by Alley Cat Games, who've worked on Chocolate Factory, Dice Hospital, and Paper Dungeons, a dungeon scrawler game. Now, Alley Cat Games is keeping this one super simple. So if you're not a retailer, if you're not pledging a group pledge, then there is only one pledge level and there are no add-ons. So it's a very simple are you or are you not going to decision. $62. The pledge level is the Kickstarter exclusive edition. It's going to get you the Kickstarter exclusive version of the game and a few extras that are all baked in. The Road Traffic mini expansion, the Service Station Upgrades mini expansion, and the Wine Import mini expansion. Shipping for the continental US is being estimated at $15, and Alley Cat Games is planning on delivering Autobahn in November of 2022. From there, we go back to Gamefound for Sleeping Gods Distant Skies. And Sleeping Gods, the original game, is currently my #1 game for 2021. I think it is awesome, amazing, and it's my favorite cooperative game of the year, easily. I mean, it's my favorite game of the year, but it's also my favorite cooperative game of the year. Beating out some other things like Role Player Adventures, Descent Legends of the Dark, all the other cooperative games of the year. I think Sleeping Gods is the best. This new game, Distant Skies, which is a standalone game, had a minimum required funding goal of $40,000. They've done very, very well. They currently have $1.7 million for this campaign, which is about 42 times that minimum required funding goal. Distant Skies is also going to fund on Wednesday, May 11th. This is a game for 1 to 4 players. Now, like the original Sleeping Gods, this is kind of an ongoing campaign game. So you're not really going to play it for a couple hours and then the game ends. That's not the way that it works. You may play it for a couple hours and then decide to put it away and come back and continue it later. But there's not really separate games. You're playing one long ongoing campaign. Because of that, they've listed the playtime at 60 to 600 minutes. That 600 minutes is basically the estimate for the entire campaign. Now, to give you a reference, if you have played Sleeping Gods, if you do know that game has an estimate of 1,200 minutes for the whole thing. So essentially what that breaks down to is that Distant Skies is about half as long as the original Sleeping Gods. Like the original, the complexity on this game is medium heavy, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at low. Now, this is a standalone sequel, so you don't need the original Sleeping Gods to play this. You can play this by itself. It's a cooperative game, and it uses action points. So you're going to be able to do different things on your turn, and what you do will be determined by how you choose to spend your action points. But you can, throughout this campaign, get the original game as well and all of this stuff. So if you have the original game, if you have kind of the bling to it, you can just get Distant Skies. If you bought the original game at retail and you don't have a lot of the extras, you can get those through this campaign, or you can just pledge this game, whether or not you have the other one. You can just get this game and play it by itself. It's completely standalone, completely its own thing. It's designed by Ryan Laukat, who's worked on Above and Below, Empires of the Void 2, Near and Far, Rome, and the original Sleeping Gods. He generally, at least at this point in his career, does all of his own art, and he even historically has done most of the art on most of the games that he's designed, and vice versa, although there are a few outliers. So as an artist, the most highest rated games that he's worked on are Above and Below, Dominion Intrigue, so that's kind of where he got his start, Near and Far, and Sleeping Gods. And then as a publisher, his company, Red Raven Games, has put out Above and Below, Empires of the Void 2, Near and Far, Rome, and the original Sleeping Gods. They have 4 different pledge levels, and then if you want to piecemeal things differently than those pledge levels, almost everything is available as an add-on. So $85, Distant Skies, that's going to get you the new standalone game. If you pledge at $128, which is Distant Skies, everything new, you're going to add on a couple of things to that pledge. You're going to get foreteller audio narration, so you'll have that available that you can use in the game. I think it's a pretty cool thing to have, and it makes the experience more immersive, but you need to have some kind of audio device while you're playing the game to be able to use that. And then back when they did the original Sleeping Gods, they put out this game, a print and play game that you could, print and play and do it on your own. So you may have already played that if you're really industrious and you're very up on Board Game Geek and you knew about the print and play. It's possible that you've already played this. But for those who haven't, or for those who want a nicer version of it, they have now made a full production version of that print and play. It's called Primeval Peril. It's for 1 to 2 players only. So both Sleeping Gods and the new Distant Skies play up to 4 players. Primeval Peril is specifically for 1 to 2 players. I actually think that's the better player count for Sleeping Gods anyway, but you can only play this new physical version of the print and play with 1 to 2 players. And it's smaller, it's designed kind of an introduction into the game, so it's only about 2 to 4 hours total. But if you haven't played that, if you were never made aware of the print and play when this came out, it wasn't sold with the original Kickstarter either. So I backed the original one. I kind of got everything. I didn't even know about this. So I'll be getting this here. And it is a part of that Distant Skies Everything New pledge, along with the foreteller narration for Distant Skies. And it is standalone, so you don't need the original Sleeping Gods to play it. Even though it was done as a print and play with the original game, it was designed to be able to be played by itself. For $205, you can pledge Sleeping Gods, and that is the original Kickstarter version of the game. So it's going to come with the expansion, the original expansion, Tides of Ruin. It's going to come with all of the extras that were a part of that original campaign. It's not just the base game. Finally, for $333, you can pledge the Sleeping Gods Complete Collection pledge, and that's going to kind of combine those other two previous pledges. So you'll get everything new for Distant Skies, and you'll get all of the old Sleeping Gods stuff. Now, in terms of add-on prices, let's say you wanted additional copies of Sleeping Gods Distant Skies, you can add on more copies at $85 each. For $14, you can add on the foreteller audio narration. For $15, you can add on foreteller narration for the original Sleeping Gods game, as well as that original Tides of Ruin expansion. Now, this is not something that was available previously. In fact, I believe they've added it on mid-campaign. So I think even if you're to get the all-in pledge, I think you still need to add on that foreteller narration for the original game if that's something that you want. Maybe you have the original game, you haven't finished it, you're going to replay it. Maybe you're getting everything through this campaign, so you've never owned Sleeping Gods. But that did not come as a part of the original campaign. It is a new item. And so double check, I'm not 100%, but I think even if you're getting everything and you want the foreteller for the original game, you will need to add that on. For $80, you can add on the original Sleeping Gods game that does not include the Tides of Ruin expansion, but you can also add that on. That's $30 as an add-on. For $20, you can add on Mac's Journal, which is just a little kind of custom notebook that you can kind of keep track of what you're doing in the game. And that item and several of the items I'm going to be talking about next are all part of the original Sleeping Gods game. That also includes $15 for the Sleeping Gods Battle Mat, $20 for the Sleeping Gods Custom Metal Coins, and $10 for the Sleeping Gods Painted Chip, which is a custom version of the first player marker. Also $15 for the 3D resources that were part of the original Sleeping Gods game, as well as $15 for Sleeping Gods Dungeons, which was a little mini expansion that allowed you to put more dungeons into the original Sleeping Gods game. Now, this is something that was included, but I don't think promoted with the original Sleeping Gods Kickstarter editions. So if you have the original Kickstarter version of the game, you probably already have this, and you may not even realize that you do. So double check, but if you have that original Kickstarter version, you already have this. I think it's something that not a lot of people realize that they have. For $10, you can add on the Sleeping Gods Distant Skies soundtrack. And for $30, you can add on Sleeping Gods Primeval Peril. And again, that is the new physical version of what had originally been a print and play that is now being offered through this campaign as a physical game. But that does come as a part of that $128 Distant Skies Everything New pledge. Now, continental US shipping has been estimated at $16, which is really low for a lot of this content. So I'm assuming that estimate is actually for the new stuff, for Distant Skies, and not everything if you're getting all of the old stuff. And finally, Red Raven Games is planning on delivering Sleeping Gods Distant Skies in August of 2023. From there, we go back to Kickstarter for Wayfarers of the South Tigris. This is the first game in the new third trilogy from Garpel Games, the first being the Of the North Sea games, the second being Of the West Kingdom games. They're going with more of an Arabian theme for this one. They've still got the Miko on board for art, but the art is going to look substantially more different from their other games because they're going with a different kind of theme and a different art style that fits that. I think that's really cool that they're diversifying and they're giving a new look to this new trilogy. They had a minimum required funding goal of $15,000. They're currently at $312,000, which is about 21 times that minimum required funding goal. Wayfarers is also going to fund on Wednesday, May 11th. It's a game for 1 to 4 players, plays in about 60 to 90 minutes. Complexity on the game is heavy, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at low. Now, like a lot of the other Garphill games, there's a bunch of mechanics involved. Primarily, though, it's a worker placement game using dice workers. And again, it's got a new style of art and an Arabian theme to its setting. Shem Phillips is back on board as one of the co-designers. He has worked on Architects of the West Kingdom, Paladins of the West Kingdom, Raiders of the North Sea, Raiders of Scythia, and Viscounts of the West Kingdom. And co-designing with him is S.J. McDonald, who's worked on Architects, Circadian's First Light, Circadian's Chaos Order, and Paladins and Viscounts. Mahalo Dmitrievsky, perhaps best known as the Miko, is back on board as well. He's previously worked on Architects of the West Kingdom, Imperium Classics, as well as Imperium Legends, Paladins of the West Kingdom, Raiders of the North Sea, and Viscounts of the West Kingdom. Garphill Games is the publisher. They publish all of these games, but the games that are highest of theirs on Board Game Geek are Architects of the West Kingdom, Hadrian's Wall, Paladins of the West Kingdom, Raiders of the North Sea, and Viscounts of the West Kingdom. Now, because this is a new entry into a new trilogy for them, there aren't that many pledge levels. What you'll typically see is that they're going to do 2 more games in this series, and usually when they do those, you'll be able to get the previous games and the previous expansions and promo packs and all those kinds of things as well. So you can wait, a couple of years until they're doing the last game in the series and then kind of pick up everything at once and get everything shipped at once. But if you really want this game, you can get it now. There just aren't going to be a lot of extras because this is the start of a new trilogy. Another interesting thing is they have baked their shipping prices into their pledge prices. So there are no additional shipping costs. When you pledge this game, the shipping is included with that. You're not going to be getting hit with shipping charges later. Garphill Games has historically been really good about shipping anyway. They usually had the shipping amount set at a very low amount, like $10, $15, and that was just standard. So you never really got hit for a lot of shipping on Garphill Games games, and I'm assuming that part of the shipping previously had been baked into the pledges as well. But I think with what's continuing to go on with global supply issues and escalating shipping costs, they've just put all of the shipping costs into their pledge levels, so there is no additional shipping. That means if you pledge $43 for the Wayfarer pledge, you're going to be getting the game, free shipping, and a promo pack. If you pledge for $54 at the Coinfarer level, you're going to get all those things and then add on a pack of 50 metal coins. There are multiple pledge levels for different languages, and they're each labeled Wayfarer and Coinfarer. So just make sure that when you're pledging for the language that you want the game for. Now, again, there is no shipping for this one, so whatever you pledge at, that is going to be your total. There will not be more charges later at all. And Garphill Games is planning on delivering Wayfarers in December of 2022. We're going to stick around Kickstarter for one more game, the final game on Kickstarter this period, and that is the DC deck building game 10th anniversary. Now, this game had a $50,000 minimum funding goal. They're currently at $769,000, which is about 15 times that minimum required funding goal. This project is going to fund on Thursday, May 12th. The gameplay is 2 to 5 players. Games typically take about 45 minutes. Complexity on this is light. It's a very light game. Maybe at times with various expansions, it creeps up into the medium light level, but generally it's pretty light game. And finally, we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at medium low. The game is co-designed by Matt Hyra, who's worked on Attack on Titan deck building game, GKR Heavy Hitters, and Versa System, along with Ben Stoll, who's worked on Let's Summon Demons, The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring deck building game, and Word Whimsy. Now, unfortunately, there's no artists that are credited on this project, and I've tried to figure out who the artists are. I think there are multiple reasons for that. Part of this is that they're doing a new version, a 10th anniversary edition of an older game, and there are so many expansions, and a lot of them are available here. So there's a lot of art in this game. They have credited cover artists in their campaign, but they're just doing covers for the new boxes, so they aren't actually doing internal art. The other reason is, I'm not 100% on this, but I believe that much of the art throughout all of the expansions and the original game is pulled from their comics. It's still not a good thing. I'd still like to see those comic book artists credited for their work, but they haven't been in a way that I can easily pull them out and identify them and credit them. So it's unfortunate. I often don't talk about campaigns if they don't credit their artists, but I'm making an exception for this one since it's been around for a while. It's fairly well known. It has lots of content to it. It's a known quantity. It's being published by Cryptozoic Entertainment, who has published the entire slate of DC deck building game stuff. They've also put out Gravwell, Escape from the Ninth Dimension, Love Letter Batman, and Spyfall, the entire series of Spyfall games. There's a lot of those as well. Now, for $70, you can get Injustice for All. That is the main two games of this campaign. You've got the new Injustice version of the game and Rivals the Flash versus Reverse Flash. If you pledge $135, welcome to the multiverse. That's also going to get you the Multiverse box, the Supervillains edition, and the Supervillains playmat, including the previous content from the first pledge. Now, if you pledge for $200, DC deck building game Superfan, you'll get all of that stuff, plus you'll get the other multiverse box, the Superheroes edition, and the Injustice playmat. If you pledge at the $345 pledge, DC deck building game Infinite, that's going to get you both of the multiverse boxes, the original core game, and a bunch of expansions: Confrontations, Dark Knight's Metal, Forever Evil, Heroes Unite, and Teen Titans. Then at the $365 pledge level, DC deck building game Infinite plus promo pack, you're going to get all of that stuff and then add on the anniversary promo pack. So that additional pledge level simply adds on the new promo pack. Okay, let's talk about the add-ons. For $45, you can add on an additional version of the new Injustice. For $25, you can add on an additional copy of the new Rivals the Flash versus Reverse Flash. For $45, you can get the Multiverse Box Supervillains Edition. Also for $45, you can get the Multiverse Box Superheroes Edition. $15 will get you the DC Bombshells crossover pack, but keep in mind, that's already included with every pledge level, so there's no reason to add that on unless you want a second copy. $25 will get you the Injustice playmat as an add-on. $25 will also get you all of the original cards, so you won't actually get the base game, you'll just get all of the original cards. And all of the expansions that are available in the Infinite pledge levels, there's 5 of them, they're all available as add-ons for $25 each. So that includes Confrontations, Dark Knight Metal, Forever Evil, Heroes Unite, and Teen Titans, each for $25. For $15, you can add on the DC deck building game rule books. There's 6 of them. I think they've just been revised over time. So if you want the newer versions of the rule books, you can just get them all at once as a pack, as an add-on. $20 will get you the anniversary promo pack. That's the thing that's added on at the highest pledge level. For $10, you can add on the Nemesis promo pack. And then finally, $10 will also get you the character promo pack. Shipping in the continental US is being estimated at $20, $35, $44, and $49. That's a lot for shipping, but I think that's what we're going to start to see. Shipping costs for a lot of these bigger games are going to be more expensive than they were before because companies can no longer afford to just eat it. It's going to end up putting a bunch of companies out of business, and if more companies don't want to go, they're going to need to not eat so much of the shipping. So there will be higher shipping rates, I think, more and more. You'll also notice that I listed 4 shipping estimates there. The reason is that the highest shipping estimate, the $49, is for the 2 highest pledge levels. So that one highest pledge level, all that did was add on a promo pack. So both of those 2 higher infinite level pledge levels have estimates of $49. And then finally, Cryptozoic Entertainment is planning on delivering the rewards from the DC Comics deck building game 10th anniversary in December of 2022. From there, we go back to Gamefound for the final 2 campaigns of this week. The first here is Lawyer Up Season 2. This had a minimum required funding goal of $24,000. They're currently at $95,000, which is about 4 times that minimum required funding goal. Lawyer Up is going to complete its funding on Thursday, May 12th. This is a game for 1 to 2 players. It plays in about 60 to 70 minutes. Complexity on the game is medium heavy, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at medium low. Now, this is a 2-player card game that uses things like area majority, pattern building, and set collection. It's very much a head-to-head card game that takes place around court cases. It kind of reminds me of something like Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney, if instead of playing against, like a computer game or a mobile game, you were actually playing against another player. So players will be using cards that come out to try to build their cases up and defeat each other in a courtroom setting. And there are several different cases that are available. Some of them came from Season 1, some of them are available in Season 2, and you can also pick and choose which ones if you want to do them as add-ons. The game is co-designed by Samuel Bailey, who's worked on Forbidden Stars, and Mike Nade. Mike Nade is the owner-operator of Rock Manor Games, which is the company publishing this. It's his company. And he basically publishes the games that he's designed, which has included The Few and Cursed, Maximum Apocalypse, and Set a Watch. The artists on Lawyer Up are Vincent Christians, Scott Simmons, and Mike Zeilinger. Mike Zeilinger has previously worked on Android Netrunner and Rune Age. And Rock Manor Games, the publisher here, Mike Nade's company, their highest rated games on Board Game Geek include Maximum Apocalypse, Set a Watch, and Set a Watch Swords of the Coin. Now, there's 4 pledge levels for Lawyer Up. The first is for $32. It's called Associate, and that is going to get you the core game, the base game, the original game, the kind of Season 1 game. It doesn't quite have all of the cases that Season 1 came with if you got everything, but it will get you the original core game. Pledging at the $40 level, called Named Partner, will get you 3 new cases, the 3 new cases of Season 2. That's the Casino Heist case, the Divorce case, and the Private Eye case. There's also a solo expansion, but it's not included at that pledge level. For $50, which is the Season 2 all-in, you'll get all 3 of those cases and the solo expansion. Now, if you pledge at $114, which is called Workaholic, that will give you the remaining cases from Season 1. That's the Godfather case and the Witch Trial case. Now, in terms of doing these things as add-ons, the first pledge level that we talked about was $32 for the core set. You can also get that as an add-on. It's also $32 as an add-on. It's called Core Set. And that's going to come with the Murder and Art Forgery case. The rest of the cases, you can add them all on. They're $16 each. So $16 will get you the Godfather case, $16 for the Witch Trial case, $16 for the Casino Heist case, $16 for the Divorce case, and $16 for the Private Eye case. The solo expansion is a little bit less than the cases. It's $12 to add on the solo expansion. And then there are 2 playmats available, and these are not included at any of the pledge levels. So if you want one of these playmats, you need to add these on. For $20, you can get the 1920s style playmat, or for $20, you can get the modern courtroom style playmat. Shipping in the continental US has been estimated at $10, $12, and $14. I believe the difference, because we're talking about 3 different estimates with 4 different pledges, I believe the 2 middle pledge levels are both at the $12 estimate, because that all-in simply adds on the solo expansion. So there's not too much difference size or weight-wise between the second and third pledge levels. And finally, Rock Manor Games is planning on delivering Lawyer Up Season 2 in March of 2023. That brings us to our final campaign of the weekly this week. This is Oranienburger Kanal on Gamefound. It had a minimum required funding goal of $10,500. They're currently at $68,500, which is about 6.5 times that minimum required funding goal. This one's actually going to complete its funding on Saturday, May 14th. And it's a game for 1 to 2 players. I think that needs to be stressed because this is an economic euro from Uwe Rosenberg. and most of his games play more players. So this is specifically for 1 to 2 players. Oranienburger Kanal plays in 45 to 90 minutes. It has a complexity level of medium heavy, although this might actually push into the heavy range, kind of like Le Havre. Le Havre is another Rosenberg game that doesn't really look very complicated on the surface. The choices are not that complex. But later in the game, as you build up your tableau of cards and you're trying to coordinate everything, the game can get a lot crunchier and a lot more complex as those decisions kind of compound upon themselves. And finally, we are setting the risk associated with this campaign at medium-high. Now, this is an economic euro designed by Uwe Rosenberg. As I mentioned before, it's for 1 to 2 players, so that does make it kind of unique. And I really like Uwe Rosenberg's games, the way he designs things often around industrial settings and creating engines of resources around resource generating industries that are usually very fascinating, the way that the design is constructed. This particular game is about building new industries along with pathways, streets, railways, and canals. As I mentioned already, it's designed by Uwe Rosenberg, who has previously worked on Agricola, Caverna the Cave Farmers, A Feast for Odin, Fields of Arles, and Le Havre, and the art is by Harold Lieske, who's previously worked on The Castles of Burgundy, Dominion, Dominion Intrigue, Power Grid, and Puerto Rico. And it's being published by Spielworks, probably best known for publishing Die Macher, La Grange, and Colon Colony. Now, this is another campaign that is very simple on the surface. There are only a few different pledge levels. And on top of that, they're baking in a lot of shipping for what this game is. So it may look like you're paying a lot of shipping for what it is, but I think what that means is that on the other side, there won't be any shipping surprises. So for $42, you can pledge Oranienburger Kanal. That's the base version of the game. For $48, you can pledge Oranienburger Kanal plus expansion set 1. And for $52, you can pledge Oranienburger Kanal plus expansion sets 1 and 2. And then the shipping estimate in the continental US is $26. And finally, Spielworks is presently planning on delivering Oranienburger Kanal in December 22. Now, that wraps up this section for this week. That's 9 different crowdfunding campaigns. Hopefully there is something in there to your taste, and I was able to answer some questions or point you in a new direction. Now, this was a big week for me personally. I've been managing to keep my pledging down recently to like maybe a game or 2 a week, but a lot of the games that I was most interested in are a part of this period. So I covered 9 games this week, and of those 9, I'm actually pledging 6 of them. So if you want to play the home game, you can try to figure out which 6 games I pledged, or maybe it'd be easier to figure out which 3 games I did not pledge. But in terms of what I pledged from last week, I pledged 2 of those games. The first is Maglev Metro, Mechs, Monorails, and More. I have the original Maglev Metro game that was first put out through retail channels. It's a really good train game. It's not my favorite train game, but I like train games so much I don't think I have to pick just one. And what makes Maglev Metro so special is that the pickup and deliver that you're doing in that game isn't delivering goods like you normally would in a game like Railways of the World or Age of Steam or something like that. You are picking up passengers, and you then use those passengers on your player board to sort of build your engine and build up the kinds and amounts of actions that you can do on your turn. So it is a train game and it is an engine building game. It's a very cool combination of genres. And I like it so much, I thought, yeah, I'm going to pledge this one and pick up the 6 expansion maps, so I did. I also pledged The Dark Quarter, which is the new app-based investigation games from Lucky Duck Games, this time with the involvement of Van Ryder Games, because Evan Derrick, who's one of the main designers at Van Ryder, he worked on Detective, City of Angels, and Final Girl. He is the main designer behind The Dark Quarter. It's set in New Orleans in the 1980s. It has a really cool, diverse a group of investigators and characters, and you're going to be working together cooperatively to solve cases. It feels like they've taken everything they've learned from Chronicles of Crime, which is another app-based investigation game, and they've paired it with some of the gameplay mechanics that they used in Destinies. Now, Destinies was actually a competitive game. It used similar app-based technology, but players played fantasy characters, and they were sort of each competing to solve the mystery of their characters in sort of a time-based game. So whoever solved their mystery the best and the quickest would win that game. The downside with Destinies is because it's still kind of an investigation game and there isn't much change from game to game, there's not a lot of replay value in Destinies, which in my mind is not really the greatest pairing for a competitive game. So with Dark Quarter, they went back to making a cooperative game, and now players are working together to solve cases, and they've, I think, from what I can tell, kind of brought in the best of the various app-based games and mechanics that they've worked on to date. I think Dark Quarter looks really cool. It's delivering at Halloween, which is going to be perfect. There's a lot of monsters, and if you did one of the higher pledge levels like I did, you're getting a lot of monster miniatures and some NPC miniatures as well. It looks really cool. It'll be delivering around Halloween, and hopefully by that time I will have the Think Outside the Board Twitch channel running, and I'll be able to play those cases streaming for everyone to watch and participate in. That brings us to the end of another video. Thank you very much for spending some time with me and watching. Join me again next week for another Kickstarter Weekly. I am behind the scenes working on creating my studio space upstairs, getting new equipment in, lighting, and also working on my wedding, which is going to happen on June 17th. So there's kind of a lot going on behind the scenes right now until I sort of relaunch Think Outside the Board 2.0 with better look visually, a better studio, better equipment, along with a focus that's going to shift back towards teach-in reviews, live streams, various top 10 lists, and the occasional promotional TikTok video, kind of little mini reviews to generate a little bit of traffic from TikTok. I'll be, for now, just concentrating on these Kickstarter Weeklies. So join me next week for another Kickstarter Weekly. In the meantime, play lots of great games. I didn't play anything this week, but for next week, I know that I'm playing Bonfire and Cryo. I may also get a game played called Strawberry Sunset, possibly Luna Deluxeified. I may sneak in another game or two, maybe The Loop. I've got 8 games left to play before I can produce my top 30 games of 2020. Once I get that done, I'll be doing 2021, probably before the end of this year. And then once we head into 2023, I'll be getting my 2022 list done, and then I'll sort of be on track. And every spring from then on, I'll be producing a top 30 list for the previous year. But I'm going back a little bit and playing catch up, which means you'll be getting some bonus lists as I get to them. I hope you get the chance to play some really good games this week as well. Be excellent to each other. And if you haven't done it yet, please remember to like and subscribe on your way out. Take care.